Hello again, everybody. Life Skodnick from the World Baseball Network here with Brandon, Anthony, and Alian. We're going to talk a little bit about the departure of the Oakland A's from the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum. They played their last game in the Coliseum last week after moving there in 1968. They've been there longer than they've been in any market. Remember, they played in Philadelphia from 1901 to 1954, Kansas City from 1955 to 1967, and Oakland from 1968 until now. And it seems like they're going to be in Sacramento next year, playing in a 14,000-seat AAA ballpark that they're going to continue to share with the Sacramento River Cats of the Pacific Coast League, which will certainly be interesting. For it sounds like 3 years until they get a ballpark built in Las Vegas, Nevada, provided that the financing gets done for that, which as of yet it hasn't. So nothing gets built until there's financing in place, and it's going to cost about $1.8 billion to build the A's a 33,000 seat ballpark in Las Vegas, which is it going to be a great market for Major League Baseball? Remains to be seen. But certainly a lot of pro sports have found their way to Las Vegas in recent years. Let's start out by talking about the A's history a little bit. I'm a little older than you three guys, but in the late 1980s, when I was in third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, the A's had Mark McGwire, they had Jose Canseco, Ricky Henderson on and off. Ricky obviously was quite well traveled as a major leaguer, but he is an Oakland native. And they made the World Series in back-to-back years. They won in '89 in the series against the Bay Series against the San Francisco Giants. They lost in 1990, getting swept by the Cincinnati Reds, Lou Pinella's only managerial victory in the World Series. But for those of us who are younger, we remember the A's being very competitive through the regular season and then not doing a whole lot in the playoffs. And now, finally, after the COVID season, there has been absolutely no effort by A's owner John Fisher and the organization to put a competitive team on the field. So, guys, what's your impression of the way the A's have been run since the end of the 2019 season? And is anything going to change with the change of scenery?
I don't think so. I mean, they said, you see, when they were marketing them for Sacramento, they're like stars such as Aaron Judge. They're not even marketing their own players. So it makes you wonder, if they can't even market their own players, how is that anything going to change? They've had the stars in recent years. They had Matt Olson, Matt Chapman, Marcus Semien. They've had the stars, and they didn't even get much. I mean, Matt Olson got a little bit cheaper than what we were expecting. John Fisher has shown time and time again that he will not spend no matter what. I truly do not think anything is going to change even with this move. Because at the end of the day, we've seen what happens when Oakland has a competitive team. They're one of the most passionate fans in all of baseball. You could even argue all of sports. Honestly, my favorite clip of them is when Grant Balfour's entrance to a One by Metallica. Everyone in that stadium was going crazy. And that's what Oakland deserves. And it's just awful that it was taken from them by an owner that is not going to change his ways.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I don't think anything's going to change with John Fisher. Yes, there's going to be a change of scenery, right, with Las Vegas. And I can't lie, as a baseball fan, I am a little excited. But moving the Athletics to Vegas, I do not think was the answer. I think the answer was to put an expansion team in Vegas if MLB truly wanted to play there. However, just the way John Fisher has been running this franchise, it does not work. The Moneyball strategy does not work anymore. Trading away your good players, rather, for ones that could potentially grow to be good again, and then repeating the cycle over and over and over again just does not work. And Athletics fans were tired of it already, and that showed. They wanted John Fisher to sell the team. They had boycotts, reverse boycotts. They tried their best to show John Fisher what they wanted for their team, and it's just he did not give it to them. And it's really a shame to see what's happening to that franchise and what's happening to their fans.
Yeah, I kind of echo the same sentiment. It's like they can move the team wherever they want. The ownership's not going to change the way they run things. And, like Anthony said, like that Moneyball system, like it's just not, it doesn't matter if they're in Vegas or if they're in Oakland. Like Brad Pitt said in the movie Organ Donors for the Rich, it's going to be like that for as long as I can even think of in the foreseeable future. It's rinse and repeat. Being in Vegas isn't going to change that. I hope, as a baseball fan, I hope, Vegas is a huge market and, something unforeseen happens and, they're selling out games, but just, I don't see it happening. Like they're already going to be competing with the Raiders, the Golden Knights, and Major League Baseball already struggles competing with other professional sports as is. I think moving, like Anthony said, expansion team might've been the route they should have gone, but moving, a team that already struggles to fill seats, not because fans don't like the team, it's because fans don't respect the ownership. Moving the team to Las Vegas isn't going to change that.
When we talk about the fans not showing up in Oakland, this is kind of a repeat of the playbook that was used to get the Expos out of Montreal. For those who are too young, the Expos played in Montreal from 1969 through the 2004 season. In 1994, the players went on strike in August. The Expos were the best team in the National League. They had a 74-40 record. But Montreal is a smaller market, and they were, for several reasons that I could go on and on about for hours, because I do actually have a degree in Canadian history. The Montreal market was unable to come up with an owner that would buy the team from Claude Brochu. So Jeffrey Loria was allowed to buy the team, a New York City art dealer. He installed his son-in-law or stepson, David Sampson, as the president, and basically invested no money in players. Free agents were allowed to walk. Crowds got less and less. They draw on opening night, maybe the second night. And then, in 2003, the team was in the last week of August, and 3 games out of first place. And back then, teams could call up 15 guys to the major leagues for September, add a little depth, give guys a chance, give some of the guys a little bit of a rest. And the Expos didn't call anybody up. At that point, Loria wasn't the owner anymore. The Expos had been sold to Major League Baseball in a multifaceted transaction that saw John Henry sell the Marlins to Loria and buy the Boston Red Sox. And Loria sold the Expos to Major League Baseball and got the Florida Marlins. But basically, it was the same thing. Invest no money on the players because we don't want anybody to come to the games. If nobody comes to the games, we can say, well, no one comes to the games here, so we're just going to move the team. And that's what Major League Baseball did, moving the Expos to Washington, where they became the Nationals. You can't argue that the plan in Oakland has been much different. The only thing is that Major League Baseball doesn't own the club. When you look at what the plan has been, it's been executed and it's been successful once again. What do you guys think fans should do to prevent this sort of thing ever happening again? And is there anything?
If I may, I think the fans did all they could do. It's really out of their power at this point. Even reporters on the news and the local stations over in Oakland, like they completely disagree with John Fisher. It's pretty well known in the sports world that fans tried their best to show their support of the Athletics, but also be like heavily critical of them for getting rid of players and kind of intentionally tanking their team so that they have somewhat of a reason to move. And it's just, I don't know what more they could have done. It's, it concerns me a little bit that the MLB hasn't stepped in more than they already did and try to force a sale of the Athletics, seeing how that team has been treated. And it concerns me how other owners in the league have kind of let them do this and let them move to Vegas. So I don't know what it means for baseball. I think it should scare some fan bases that, you know, potentially are failing. It should scare Tampa Bay Rays fans. It should scare, you know, really any team that does not succeed in a way that is preferable to their owner. It seems like there's a scapegoat now.
I think it's kind of a lose-lose situation for the fans, right? It's like, you know, you show up to the games, you know, you're supporting the team financially by going there, but you know you have an owner that's not going to use that money for anything. And then on top of that, you have this product that's being put on the field that has, you know, clearly no intent of being a winning team. So now you're sort of in a situation to where you don't want to go to the games anyways. So I don't think anything's going to change, because I don't think John Fisher is going to change the way he runs the team. You know, fans showing up to the games isn't going to suddenly make him want to go out and spend money on guys that could help the team win. I think the team is going to continue to be run the same way. And it's just kind of just a bad situation for the fans. Like, if you watch the last game at the Coliseum, you know, all the camera shots of fans crying, you know, like the signs, you know, you can see that those were people that poured their emotions and their hearts into that team for decades. And all for them to just up and leave to Vegas, you know, it's kind of, you feel bad for the people, you know, like the organization, it's whatever, you know. Fisher's still, at the end of the day, he's wildly rich. Like, nothing's going to change in his day to day. But you think about, you know, the fans that, you know, there are fans that watch all 162 games despite how bad the A's are. So, you know, those are the people that you feel for, thinking, wow, this team just up and left them with nothing after all these years of continuous support.
I think also during that final game, Dallas Braden shared like an emotional story of him having to explain to his young daughter that Oakland is that the team is moving, and she was like, "Are we not going to be able to go to the Coliseum again?" She was also talking about her sister, and it was touching. It's not just, you know, the people that grew up with this team, but it's the young kids who have now had to suffer through losing the Raiders and the Warriors. And I believe, Life, you mentioned this, it's the first team, or the first city to lose like 3 teams. And they're going to have no representation anymore. And it's heartbreaking, because, as you said, Oakland's a very passionate fan base.
Yeah, that's not surprising. I mean, Oakland, the organization has done everything they could to stifle any sign of fan dissent on any sort of official communication, whether that's blocking comments on literally every social media account that they have, including LinkedIn. Like, who goes on LinkedIn to complain about anything? But you know, they don't want anyone complaining on their LinkedIn page. They don't want anyone replying to their Twitter posts or X posts or whatever Elmo wants us to call his little play toy now. Facebook, you name it. So, you know, one of the things you mentioned was reverse boycott night, and I was there last year. I was there for that entire series against Tampa Bay, actually. And look, no one's going to tell you that the Oakland Coliseum is modern, that it's nice, but it's functional. And as a ballpark goes,
yeah, if I may, look, like I said before, I can't lie. It does excite me to see what the baseball atmosphere will be like in Las Vegas. And in all honesty, I truly believe that even if the athletics organization was sold to some other billionaire within the last 2 or 3 years, I think the athletics would have moved on to a different city anyway. It just was only a matter of time because of the city government and, you know, what happened there. Like, yes, the Howard Terminal project probably could have worked out, but I think that's kind of just pushing the goalpost down the line. There has to be some kind of reason that Oakland has lost all its major sports teams. Like, if that happened in any other city, you'd be like, it's the city's fault. Like, it's both on John Fisher and the city, right? But the problem is that the fans suffer, right, from that. Fisher's end game, I think, is to kind of make the Athletics like a tourist destination in Las Vegas, because a lot of Las Vegas is, the people there are, most of them are tourists, right? The most of them that go to games are tourists, right? I don't see a lot of the Vegas population really going out to like Golden Knights games or Raiders games or Las Vegas Aces games. Like, yes, those teams have been relatively successful in the past couple of years, but most of their attendance comes from tourists, right? Because Vegas is a tourist city. It's the city of sin. It's an adult's playground, right? So that's why I kind of see the Athletics kind of like leaning into that kind of culture, and John Fisher just trying to make a quick buck, trying to make some profit off of that kind of culture.
Yeah, I think you want to move your franchise out of like the forefront, right? Like the A's fans, very passionate, also very critical of the team. You move the team to Vegas, like Anthony said, you're not getting passionate fans. Sports are maybe the fourth, fifth most important thing in Vegas on any given night. So, the people going to those games aren't going to be A's fans. They're going to be people going for an entertainment, like for late night entertainment. That's what it is. Like that, they want to be entertained by a baseball game. They're not going to really get that with the product the A's put on the field, but the atmosphere and all that will be superior to what it was in the Coliseum. And I think you want to take that critical acclaim away from your team. Like, you're not going to have A's fans in Vegas complaining about, we can't hit, we can't pitch. No one's going to care. So I think that's part of the reason you move from a passionate city like Oakland to a city like Las Vegas, where your team isn't the most important thing in the world. You're just there to make a quick buck,
Yeah, I mean, I ultimately think that the end game is multifold, right? I mean, the owners want the A's out of Oakland, so more money comes in to the A's and thus to the league, which can then be spread around via revenue sharing. Which, remember, part of what precipitated the A's looking for other places to go, including Las Vegas, was that if they stayed in the Coliseum, they weren't going to get revenue sharing checks anymore. And that was largely, I think, what was balancing the books and making Fisher money, despite, no fans showing up. Ultimately, I think wherever this franchise lands permanently, maybe it's Las Vegas, maybe it's Portland, maybe it's Oakland, who knows? Ultimately, I think within 5 years of the team finding a new landing place or a new living space or a new home, John Fisher won't own this team. He's looking to flip the team and make money. He bought what in finance we would call a distressed asset, right? Like, think of the A's this way. While the A's are playing in Oakland Coliseum, which was not, as I said, a nice place. There is sewage that leaks out of the sewer and into the locker room. There, it's crumbling concrete. It has, none of the creature comforts that the modern ballparks have. While they're playing there, it's kind of like the house that the old lady down the street has that she hasn't been taken care of because her husband's passed away, and she, the they need new paint and new siding and new shutters, and there's a broken window and everything. The lawn needs to be weeded and cut a little bit more than it is. That's the A's when Fisher buys them, right? And then, you move them to a nice new ballpark. It's like tearing down that house and putting up a new, bigger house on the same property in a desirable neighborhood. You then sell that house and you sell the new house, and you make money. Fisher's looking to take a distressed asset, which is the A's, make it a non-distressed asset by getting them a new ballpark in a snazzy new city where he thinks people are going to show up, and flip the team for twice or what he paid for it or something. I'm not entirely sold that if a new ballpark had been built in Oakland, if you had just gotten the ballpark done in Oakland or somewhere else in the Bay Area, be it Fremont, Vallejo, Berkeley, San Jose, I think he still could have flipped the team for twice as money. He just, for whatever reason, wants to get this done so badly that he's completely turned his back on the metropolitan area in which he grew up.
Yes, John Fisher wants to flip this team. But from a business standpoint, if you're a potential buyer, right, and you see how John Fisher treated his team and how, like how everything's gone, don't you think you can kind of use that as a leverage against him to try to get the price of the team down a little bit? Like, yes, he invested this money. Yes, he did this, but like the team's been failing for so long. The team doesn't invest money in the team in other areas. I don't know. It just seems like John Fisher really just does not care, and I don't know. It's also affected other teams in the league too. I heard how the MLB, was before they had any plans of expansion, they had to deal with this Oakland situation. They had to deal with Tampa Bay getting a new stadium or potentially moving, and I feel like it's kind of stunted the growth of the sport almost, trying to drag this on as long as they can.
Tampa Bay and Oakland were the two stadium situations that had to get solved before Major League Baseball would expand again. And, I don't necessarily think that the Oakland situation is solved until there's a ballpark built in Las Vegas. So take from that what you will.
Yeah, I think he's kind of just banking on those first couple of years in Vegas, drawing enough fans, making enough money to where then the team is more desirable for someone to buy. And if you think about new ownership, it's like Fisher's not going to be a tough act to follow, like ownership wise. So I think it is, an attractive asset to purchase, like Anthony said earlier, for any other billionaire. But I think the move out of Oakland and, sort of just kind of a fresh start in terms of fans coming into the stadium, I think that's a big part of, getting the value of the A's up. Because I do think, because like when this team whenever the new ownership comes in, like you said, you don't think Fisher is going to be the owner for 5 years after wherever this team finds a new home. New ownership doesn't really have to go out and go sign, a 10-year deal for some mega superstar. I think A's fans will be happy with them signing just their own guys instead of letting them walk. So there are small market teams that make it work, like the Rays. I mean, they went to the World Series a few years ago. So, and they're not one of the heavy spenders. So it is possible to put a competitive product on the field without spending money like the Yankees, Dodgers, Mets do. So I think new ownership, they just have to reach that bare minimum for A's fans to really, be happy with the team they're watching.
I think it's also just talking, like having an open line of communication. I mean, Hal Steinbrenner, at least every year, will appear on the Michael Kay show. Yeah, that is owned by the Yankees, or yes, network is owned by the Yankees, but he at least will go out there and talk to the fans and address these concerns. All these A's fans are really asking for is talk to us. Like anytime they try to offer some criticism, it's completely blocked. They don't listen.
What really I think is the nail in the coffin in this whole situation is how literally just a couple years prior, last year, maybe 2 years ago, the Athletics had a whole campaign called Rooted in Oakland, right? How much of a slap in the face is that to their fans? Like the fans already kind of saw that the team was on their way out in that city. And with criticism being blocked and fans not being heard, it's just, I don't know how you could stick with your team like that. I would feel completely betrayed. And I get it. Some people don't think, sports really affect people like that, but I think it was pretty evident that they do. And at the last game at the Coliseum, people were holding signs up that said, "Today there is crying in baseball." And I think that really spoke volumes. And it's a shame that this happened. And I really hope that other teams, team executives learn from it and that it doesn't happen again. But it's already happened with the Expos. So who knows?
Yeah, I look at the last game in Oakland, and 47,000 people showed up, which makes it pretty obvious to me that the A's have a fan base that is passionate, and they've had no reason to show up. You look at teams all around the major leagues, and every team has its down years. You look at the late 70s New York Mets and early 80s New York Mets. After the Tom Seaver trade in 1977, the Mets were drawing less than 10,000 people a night. Everybody points to the Montreal Expos attendance when they say, oh, they got to get the Expos out of there. It's so good that they moved. They didn't draw anybody. Well, the Expos had the highest attendance in baseball in the decade of the 1980s. So you can't tell me that Montreal is not a baseball market or that Expos fans don't care. If anything, fans not showing up when you put an absolute shit team on the field says to me that you have an educated fan base that knows what they're watching, and what they're watching right now is crap.
I think that was very well spoken. Very well spoken. I can't believe that this is happening to Athletics. I really don't see their team construction changing, the way that the team's been managed changing. It's all being done for a quick buck.
My father grew up in New York City. He was born in 1941, became a Giants fan in 1950. And when he was 16 years old, the team moved to San Francisco. He is still a Giants fan to this day, though he has not been to a Giants home game since they left New York. I asked him, did you go to that last game at the Polo Grounds against the Pirates? And he goes, no, and I wish I had. And I remember once hearing a quote from the greatest player of all time, Willie Mays, who said that, if as many people were at that last game as say they were at that last game, we never would have left New York. Nobody will be able to say that about Oakland. All right, so I guess we'll find out soon enough if the A's actually do go to Sacramento and Vegas or somewhere else, or maybe they end up back at the Coliseum next year, which wouldn't surprise me necessarily, because I don't think Sacramento is a done deal yet. So we'll wait and see. So Alian Mohammed, Anthony DePonio, Brandon, thanks for joining us. This is the A's Are Moving Roundtable from World Baseball Network.